So I'm Anna, I'm a freelance front-end developer, and I'm going to be talking today about how to survive in a harsh freelancing environment. And I've left a bit of time for questions at the end. Okay, so I started considering web design as a career in around 2007. I'd never met another web designer until I went to a Bagworld meetup in London, and I was really nervous, not only because I didn't know anyone there, but I was 17 and the venue was in a pub, and I thought I'd be kicked out and have to get on the next train home. So I walked all the way to the back of the pub, and I didn't see anyone who looked like a web designer. So I thought I must have come to the wrong place, and I was just about to leave with my tail between my legs, and there were two guys sitting there, and they said hello, and they took me under their wing, and they have done ever since. They're sitting at the front just there. And it does make me wonder what would have happened if I'd just walked out that door and gone home that day. So 3 years ago I finished school, and I made the decision to start working for myself rather than go to university. And of all the interviews I went to, accessibility and web standards weren't part of the curriculum, and no agencies in my area wanted to take me on full-time because I was too young and inexperienced. So I decided to start working for myself, which scared my teachers and family, but when they realised they couldn't convince me otherwise, they were quite encouraging. I studied a couple of courses with the Open University while I was working, and after a few months of churning out some basic websites, I still wasn't convinced I'd made the right choice to go freelance. So Clearleft were advertising for an internship at the time, so I decided at the last minute to send off an application, see what would come of it, and I was really shocked when they decided to take me on. So in the summer, I moved back home, but I just didn't really feel like home anymore. So I decided to move down permanently. Unfortunately, I moved in January when there was all that snow, so before the moving van arrived, I had to live and work for a few weeks with no desk, no bed, no pans or cutlery, no broadband, no TV, and only one change of clothes. This was the desk I made. This is a for sale sign. There are some boxes and some .NET magazines. So I grew up with broadband rather than a modem connection, so relying on a mobile internet connection was really new and sort of a really frustrating experience. I'm not going to pretend that I'm the best freelancer in the world. I've made so many mistakes and misinformed decisions along the way, but I think that's made me better at what I do. I've had to pick things up really quickly and work hard to get people to see past my age and show that I can still deliver professional results. Can I get a quick show of hands? Like, how many of you are currently freelancing? Wow, okay. And keep your hand up if you're just freelancing part-time. Yeah. And how many of you are just here to look at some pretty pictures? Cool. So if we look at how web design is made up as a whole, the majority of web designers work for sort of employees or agencies. Over a quarter are freelancers, and the rest do it as a hobby. And of these freelancers, 60% are part-time or are transitioning into full-time, and the total number of freelance web designers increased by almost 3% between 2007 and 2008, so it's becoming a considerably more competitive industry. I think a lot of people have lost their jobs during recession, and rather than look for another job, they've gone, hey, I can run a business better than this. And they decided to do just that. So it's also really interesting to look at the ages of people freelancing. So here's an interesting one. 3.7% of freelancers are under the age of 18, and a quarter are under 23. I think this is because freelancing is an increasingly attractive option for people leaving school or university, often without a real prospect of getting a job. Many make websites on a part-time basis to earn money while studying, and I wanted to find out how many have had formal training and how many, like myself, learned on the job. So in Europe, 59% of web designers are self-taught and 29% studied at university or college. The rest learn on the job. Web design is a really low barrier to entry, which is both a blessing and a curse. So anyone can call themselves a web designer after a few hours in Dreamweaver. So it's really important that when you're pitching for work, you can differentiate yourself between those who don't know their B tags from their strong tags. So it's quite surprising to see how many have never worked for a company before they went into freelance. So 35% have gone straight into freelancing. I personally think it's ideal to get agency experience before freelancing if you can, because it helps to see how other businesses work, and it makes you better at working in a team, and sometimes the agencies can give you sort of more work later on. But often it's not possible because you need to have real project experience before you can get a job, but to get a job you need real project experience. So it's not surprising that 45% of freelancers don't feel secure in their career. I've tried to find out exactly why this is, and I've created an updated version of Maslow's hierarchy of needs for web designers. You've seen quite a few of these today. But hierarchy of needs is based on the idea that you have to fulfill the basic human needs before you can achieve the higher needs, such as confidence and belonging. So every web designer needs electricity, Wi-Fi, a desk and a computer, and without these we simply can't do our jobs. For us, a stable broadband connection is a basic requirement alongside heating, and for some, including myself, regard it as important as running water. To be the best web designer that you can be, you need to be in good health and with a steady income, plenty of sleep and a pleasant working environment. Worrying about whether you can pay the rent or being constantly tired really affects your creativity. And the most important factor that affects happiness is whether you feel safe and of good health. So one thing that's a threat to anyone who works on a computer all day is RSI. If it's not treated early, you might have to take months off, and no doubt it will strike when you're at your busiest. So the same goes with any other illness or injury. And the scary thing is that 36% of freelancers don't have health insurance. And you might not think, well, that's not really relevant to sort of Europeans with the NHS, but if you have to take loads of time off work, it really affects your income. And especially if you're supporting a family. And getting business insurance is another way to help fill up that safety and security tier. Only 10% of freelancers have business insurance, so why would you need this? Well, imagine if your client asks you to create them a website and you type the phone number in wrong, or you're hosting the site and their email goes down. The client could potentially sue you for loss of income, so taking out something like professional indemnity insurance should cover you against this. Another type of business insurance is IR35. HM Revenue and Customs may select you randomly and investigate your tax claims. A legal dispute might run into the thousands, so it's a good idea to get this covered, and it's only about £100 a year. Finally, there's looking into the long-term plan. So 56% of freelancers don't have a retirement fund. When I was 18, I set up an ISA, which takes out £40 a week from my personal account and pays it into this sort of pot. And I should have over 100,000 by the time I'm 68, and that's not including interest. So you don't even have to think about it, it just sort of happens in the background. So freelancing's pretty lonely, especially if you live and work in the same place. So it's a good idea to sort of find people to work with and get feedback from. So go to lots of conferences and meetups like this, and the happier you are, the better you will be at what you do. So you need to feel confident with what you're doing. Keeping organised will help you do this. If you've got a good process, you don't feel bogged down by emails all day and you're winning lots of client projects. This will help you feel sure of yourself and boost your self-esteem. So it's suggested that self-actualization is to not do things simply for the outcome, but because it's the reason you are here on Earth. So if you enjoy your work so much that you foster communities, you teach others, maybe take on more people to work with, then you'll have reached this tier. So you don't need to earn lots of money to be happy, but it helps. So 88% of web designers are happier since they started freelancing, but only 13% are happy with the amount of income they earn. If making lots of money is your only goal, you probably won't be a very happy freelancer. A lot of people talk about success, and there's an awful lot of pressure at the moment on young web designers and developers to be some sort of entrepreneur, prodigy, or the next Mark Zuckerberg, and this really pisses me off. So here's a quote from Einstein. He said, "One should guard against preaching to young people success in the customary form as a main aim in life. The most important motive for work in school and in life is pleasure in work. Pleasure in its result, and the knowledge of the value of the result to the community." I collect a lot of quotes because I'm a girl. Here's one of my favourite ones from Herman Cain. "Success is not the key to happiness. Happiness is the key to success. If you love what you're doing, you'll be successful." So to attain this freelancing nirvana, be good at what you do and enjoy what you're doing, and you'll be successful. I do most of my work remotely, and this means my backpack is basically my office. So I used to carry a lot of folders around with me for each project, but I found this wasn't at all practical. It really held me back. So I have just about everything in a digital format now. So this is my portable office. I've got like a bag, nice big bag, pencil, paper, iPhone charger. This is where I keep my receipts. I keep them all with a bulldog clip. Wallet with stamps in it, keys so I can get back into my house. This is a 3 Wi-Fi dongle, which it's sort of wireless, and you can link up your phone and your laptop to it. And it means that if you're working in a cafe, people can come along and go, "Ooh, internet." Obviously your laptop and your charger. There's earplugs because the cafe working is really noisy, and an extension cable if you're working with lots of people, because a lot of cafes don't really have very many plugs. So one of the big questions when you're starting up is, do you need to move to a city? You can earn an average of about 5k more a year by moving to the city, but your living expenses are obviously higher. This indicates you don't need to move to a city to be successful. And also, freelancers are reported to be slightly happier if they're working in rural areas. You need to commute a fair bit, which is a bit sucky. So wherever you work, a suitable environment is vital. I often feel like the elephant from this book called 5 Minutes Pieces. Has anyone read this book? Yeah. So it's about a mummy elephant who just wants a nice cup of tea and a sit down. But whatever room she goes in, her home environment is constantly distracting her. So I find working from home really difficult, as there always seems to be something distracting me. I don't have kids or anything, but it's like, oh, I should make a cup of tea or something. So I work in a cafe most days. So these are the essentials of a good workplace. If you're in a cafe, they need to be happy that you're working there. You know, they shouldn't be like, we don't really want you here. Lots of PowerPoints, good Wi-Fi, good coffee, nice and quiet, good seating. You don't want to be sort of hunched over your desk all day, and nice people to work with. So having other people to work with is, I find, invaluable. You can get loads of feedback from people on ideas. You can share freelancing tips. And if you're in a cafe, they'll keep an eye on your stuff while you order a drink, or they'll use the opportunity to tweet poop in from your account. Because of the very low barrier to entry, it's vital that you set yourself apart from everyone else. Oh, wrong way. Part of being a freelancer involves trying to get it through to your friends and family that you do have a real job. So you have to prove to them it is, or they just won't believe you. So if you get up at midday every day, even if you work until midnight, it's not going to look very professional, especially when clients try to call you up in the mornings. So I used to get up around 11 a.m. and I'd be most productive between 5 and 3 a.m. But when I started working, when I started getting up every day at 8 and forcing myself to work until like 6 p.m., I realised I could be just as productive during that day. I created like this vicious cycle of getting up late and finishing work late, but by forcing myself to get up and go to bed at the same time every day, I was teaching my body to be productive at the best times. Your website should make it clear what sort of a person you are. One thing I see a lot of that I think comes across as really unprofessional is when people refer to themselves on their business websites as we, when it's really just one person. It's okay to be a one-man band. Clients know that they're always going to get to talk to the same person. But if you make it seem like you're bigger than you are, your clients, they might feel like they've been sort of deceived. Make all of your correspondence professional, even if it's an IM while you're like wearing your jammies. The way you communicate with clients will form an idea in their mind of what your end product will look like. So if you're really sloppy with emails, they might think the website would be sloppy too and maybe not worth the money they're paying you. However, I personally think it's okay to use emoticons in emails because I know it might not look so professional, but emails are so impersonal and you can't easily project how you're feeling. So it's easy to read something one way when it's intended to be read another way, like sarcasm. And this can often create confusion or bad feelings. Have a well-defined process. Create some pretty template documents, including a spec, quote, contract, invoice, and receipt. This will save to save time and money printing all these. If you put them on a website, like a client area, and ask your clients to print them off, create a nice print style sheet, and then you don't have to sort of send them in the post. Make time to play with new things or you'll get left behind. I book an afternoon off every week to work on personal projects. Taking precautions to avoid nasty situations is vital to survival, and at some point it's likely you'll have to deal with a client who doesn't pay you when you hand over the project. So having a contract doesn't stop this, but it makes it easier if you need to take legal action. The time you don't use one is the time you'll need one. It doesn't need to be written in legal speak, it just needs to set out what you're delivering and what you expect of the client. So yeah, always use one for protection. So what needs to go in your contract? Firstly, it needs to explain what services you're providing. So how many designs are you going to let them choose from? If they don't like the designs, do they still have to pay you? Do they still? What browsing devices is the website going to be tested in? Will their site appear at the top of Google within a few seconds of the site going live? What happens if stuff goes wrong? If the client's site goes down, will you have backups for them? This is why it's a good idea to get business insurance and legal advice, and it's also why I don't directly host client sites. Find out whether you can talk about the project to others. I like to write on my blog about sort of new techniques I'm using, and I often use screenshots from client sites I'm building as an example. Some love the extra publicity, but others prefer the project to remain confidential. Imagine if after the client site goes live, they start selling the code or designs you've produced. Make it clear what the license is on any of your code and images, and also anything you didn't produce, such as stock images. Mention that deadlines work both ways. The client has to keep them too. Just a quick point about scope creep. Scope creep happens in just about every project, and if you don't have a process for it and end up adding all these new features for free, it really sucks. But if you do have a process, it's great and it makes you more money. Just put something in your contract saying you'll charge on top of the estimate for additional features that weren't in the spec, and you may have to move the deadline. Make sure you send them an updated version of the estimate and have written confirmation from the client that they've acknowledged this. To avoid clients doing a runner, ask for 50% of the estimate up front and don't start the project until it's in your account. Something I've recently started doing is putting in my contract that I won't launch the site until the whole bill has been paid. So Sarah Parmenter, in the front there, she wrote a great piece on her blog about how important it is to get the full payment before you launch. One of the offshoots of this is that the client will not drag their feet in paying the final invoice. Before I did this, some used the opportunity to ask for small tweaks, and weeks after the site had gone live, they still haven't paid. If you're looking for more advice on writing a contract, Andy Clark wrote a really good article on 24 ways called Contract Killer. So we've got all this process stuff sorted, now it's time to find some clients. So 75% of web designers get most of their business through word of mouth, 42% from their portfolio, 27% from internet job sites, 16% from social network sites, 11% from their blog, 10% from advertising, and 9% from cold calling. Referrals are your best source of clients, so let's look at some ways of getting other people to do all the hard work for you. This is a really obvious one, but if you give out business cards to your friends and family, they'll just basically advertise for you, which is sometimes a bit annoying. And if you pin them up on notice boards and accidentally drop them in cafes, that sort of thing. My favourite way of getting clients is a bit sneaky. I attend the Business Link's free startup workshops. So they put you in a room full of people who are setting up their own companies, and almost every one of them is looking for a website. And you say, "Oh, I'm a web designer," and they suddenly go, "Ooh." I've been twice. So some people think that offering more services brings in more clients. You can do all of them, but you can't be good at all of them. So it's a good idea to restrict the services that you offer. Specialise in one area or niche based on your hobbies. This could be like school websites, wrestling websites, or even shark websites. Winning clients is only half the battle. Keeping them is arguably more important. So never make your clients work around your way of doing things. I recently deleted my Basecamp subscription because all of my clients didn't really understand what it was and why they couldn't just use email. Also find out what time of the day is best to contact your client and update them regularly on your progress. When the project is finished, phone them up every few months just to ask how they're getting on or if any of their customers have made any comments on the site. Remember, if you keep them happy, they'll not only help you maintain a steady source of income, but they'll also pass your name on to others. One way I remind clients of the value of their website is by adding some Google Analytics data to all of their maintenance invoices. It can prove that the site is successful, and it invests the client in nurturing the site over time. So now you've got the clients, how do you stay focused on the task in hand? To-do lists are vital, so getting all those things out of your head onto a list is incredibly liberating, and it feels great when you've ticked a load off at the end of the day. If you're using an app like Things, you can set recurring tasks that happen every week, like file expenses, someday tasks like book a holiday, and scheduled tasks like pay taxes. Being logged into IM all day can be horribly distracting, but turning it off can be pretty lonely. So use busy icons so that people don't distract you while you're hard at work, and respect it when other people use it too. There's a really good article on A List Apart by Jack Cheng about how we attach certain behaviours to places or objects. So if you don't have an office and you work from home, it can be really tempting to do home things when you should be working. So one way to get around this is to wear something like a hat or some shoes or a suit, just to get you in the sort of mindset of working. It really helps train your mind when you should be working and when you can relax. So you take the hat off when you finish working, that sort of thing. And if you still find yourself procrastinating, there's an app called Concentrate. I haven't actually got this, but it looks really cool. It disables particular apps and websites depending on the activity you've told it you're doing. So now you've got your process and your clients, how do you turn that into a steady stream of income? For most people, earning more and working less is their own goal, but only 22% of people actually achieve this. Most earn less than they did before they started freelancing, which isn't necessarily a problem depending on what your goals are, but it's always nice to be in the sort of work less, earn more box. It's also interesting to see how much freelancers earn depending on their job title and their gender. Female web designers earn £28.40 an hour, and male web designers earn an average of £31.10 an hour. But if you're a female programmer, you're likely to earn over £10 more an hour than the male programmers at £43.94. The survey I'm referring to has a sample size of about 3,700, but the results may still be a bit skewed because there are proportionately fewer female programmers. But I'd love to compare this with some data to see whether the pay gap is the same for female programmers in agencies or whether they're proportionately more if they're in freelance. In Europe, the average weekly hours for a freelancer is 41, and that's the highest of any continent. Australia, they clock in a cosy 37 hours. But remember, you don't get paid for all those hours. You end up having to spend a disproportionate amount of time getting your emails in order, making cups of tea, that sort of thing. That should probably be here for me. So some freelancers bill their clients for time they spend filing paperwork and replying to emails, but others account for this in their rate. Either method's valid. A lot of the time, you'll get requests from clients to change some wording or imagery on a website that only takes like 5 minutes to do. And you could send them an invoice for 5 minutes of your day, but realistically, you have to contact the client to let them know it's been done, you have to invoice them, you have to switch your focus from one task to another, and now you've got to switch back. So that could have taken around half an hour to an hour in total. Also, by billing them for only 5 minutes, it's easier for them to get back to you a few days later and drip feed you more changes. So it's a good idea to have a minimum billing rate of about an hour a day. This forces the client to list changes in bulk, and it's quicker to do them all at once and invoice them all at once than do them individually over time. Often you'll get requests for rush jobs that will take you sort of evenings and weekends to complete. And if you value your time away from your work, you must charge for more for these jobs. Often when you say you have to do this, the client decides, oh, actually it's not really a rush job. It doesn't have to be done by tomorrow. If you do personal or unbillable projects, it's also a good idea to track the hours that you spend on these, because it helps you prioritise better and also helps when you're sort of working out client estimates. Don't be tempted to take on work where the budget obviously isn't going to be enough for what they've asked you to do. Turn people down gracefully and explain why it's not enough. This is something else that Sarah Pimenta wrote to a client who wanted a website built for £500. She explained exactly how much time it would take her to build and how much per hour it would work out at, which was 4 weeks at £1.56 an hour. Being a freelancer means you have to spend a lot of time doing things that are really boring and really suck, like tax returns. So after a few weeks of using mine as a coaster, it's got a bit of food on it, I decided to get some help filling it out. I really recommend getting an accountant who knows your trade, so they really do pay for themselves. So usually they do like an hour's free meeting, sort of initial. So make sure you ask, first of all, like, what do you do? What don't you do? Do you work with clients similar to me? Can you work with the accounting software I use? And how much do you charge? Which brings me on to sort of accounting apps. The more organised you keep your accounts, the less you have to pay your accountant. Online apps are really great at this, but make sure it deals with UK tax. So they all work slightly differently, like Xero sort of automatically pulls in your bank statements. Free agents, they sort of work with, they've got accountants on their team. I personally use Free Agent, but any of these are good. There are times when everything can seem to go wrong, like no matter how careful you are. So it's always good to have a contingency plan. If your computer blew up right now, how much would you have lost, and how long would it take to get back to working as normal again? This happened to me a couple of months ago. My hard drive failed and I lost everything, right in the middle of a big client project and a day before the deadline. But luckily, I keep everything backed up on Dropbox. I simply logged into another computer and carried on working. Dropbox is really great. You don't have to commit anything. It backs everything up automatically. Also does versioning, which a lot of people don't know about, and you can share stuff with clients. You could also use stuff like Google Apps to store your documents and emails. Delicious for bookmarks. You keep all your contacts on Skype in case you lose your phone, and you can also use it to add a link to your site to show your online status as a sort of indicator of whether the client can contact you or not. So I found a screenshot from Fallout 3, which is a game set post-nuclear war, and it gives advice about emerging from the vault and acclimatising to the cruel and unforgiving outside world. And I think the points that it makes are relevant to freelancing. So first of all, partner with friendly locals. So find cool people to work with and learn off them. Referrals are your best form of advertising, and if you do good work and make clients happy, you'll be okay. If you pick yourself up from mistakes quickly then you'll be all right. So think of the worst case scenarios and how to deal with them. Live your dreams, and if something is making you unhappy, just change what you're doing. Don't be put off by hard work, because it's going to be difficult, but if you do everything in your power to succeed, you will. Remove distractions from the workplace and create a pleasant environment to work in. And stay social, because freelancers is really lonely, and working with other people is so important. Always use a contract and get financial and legal advice when you're unsure about something, and this will save you money and time in the long term. So the data I used, it's from the Freelance Switch survey, and they surveyed 3,700 people around the world, and also the A List Apart survey from 2007 and 2008, and I converted the dollars into pounds. Thank you all so much for listening.